Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer. I'm with CUGC HQ, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's Connect webinar with FSLogix. We're going to be talking about Office 365 and what we can do for you with the Zen app and Zen desktop users in the federal space. But before we jump into our presentation today, I'd like to introduce our moderator. DJ Eshelman is a leader of the Nashville CUGC local group and a CTA, and he's been a great contributor to CUGC with blog posts and helping us out in local events and at Synergy and all kinds of stuff. So I'm happy to have him back on as a webinar moderator today. So DJ, you want to say hello to everyone?
Well, hello, everyone. Glad to have you with us today. And if you're asking any questions today, I will do my best to get them answered or pass them along to our panelists. So be generous with your questions and your poll responses today. It'd be great.
Thank you. So, yep, just like DJ said, type your questions in the question box. We'll get to them throughout the presentation as we can. And if there are any we can't get to, we'll try to take those offline, but hopefully we'll have enough time today. So don't be shy. And also one other housekeeping note for you, we are recording this session today, so you will get a link in email tomorrow if you need to go back and revisit anything. All right, introducing on our call today, we have Kevin Brown. He is the Federal Sales Director at FSLogix. We also have Gabe Knuth. Hi, Kevin. We have Gabe Knuth, Product Marketing Manager. And hello. We have Dave Young. Sorry.
Hey, Kevin started it.
I know. Well, I can't see anyone. Isn't that the beauty of the webinar? Like, we can't see what each other's doing.
Sometimes that's a good thing, because I'm working on like 3 things at once, and this is Dave Young speaking here. So now they all know the voices, right, Stephanie?
That's right. Now you know who everyone is, and you'll be tested on it later. Just kidding. With that, I'm going to turn everything over to Dave right now. So, Dave, I'm going to send you the screen so you can get us started. Just one moment.
Awesome. So for everybody, as she's shifting that over, I'm Dave Young. I've recently been tasked by our leadership at FSLogix. Not recently, I guess it's been about a year, to kick off our federal program, right? So as part of doing that, I recruited some people that I had worked with in the past. A guy by the name of Kevin Brown is on the call. He's my sales counterpart. He's the one to make sure I make it to all the right meetings, right? We got our inside guy, Matt Quick, great resource. He's the one that makes sure all the things I promise you I'm going to send you actually make it out. So life is great for Dave as an engineer. All I get to do is talk about tech, which is what I really like to do, and that's what we're going to do today. I invited a good friend of mine, Gabe Knuth, onto this because, you know, sometimes when you present and you just talk and you drone on and on and on, it's not very much fun. And Gabe has a lot of experience in the industry, mostly at busting down, you know, falsehoods out there, right? And so it's a lot of fun to see a different perspective and what's going on in the industry. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do. We covered the agendas. Let's talk about the current situation in the environment a little bit, and then we're going to go into some tech stuff and a discussion there, and we'll do a quick demo, and we'll talk about Cloud Cache. So a little of what's going on in the environment is as we've had to look at what's going on with desktops. Let's go back 25 years when we all had physical desktops, and we all had our own problems there. But ultimately, as we started to transition that desktop into the data center, what we have done is we have had to do, I wouldn't call it open heart surgery, but a lot of configuration, modifications, tweaking, and things like that to make that all work. One of the things that we look at when we start to do that is what are we trying to accomplish, right? Ultimately, there's 2 beasts in this. There's IT, right? IT wants automation, single image management, non-persistence. Click it once, deploy it to many, right? Yet the end user, what does the end user want, Gabe?
The end user wants everything to work great and to not seem like it's weird, and you know, they want it to look like their home desktop, home environment.
Yeah, they don't want to know that this is a virtual machine, right? They want their persistence. They want their stuff, right? And so when we look at that, IT has created this dilemma. Now, if you ever heard me speaking when I was at VMware, I would say that it was perfect for non-persistence for IT, but don't say that around an end user, right? Because the end user hated that. And as we start to look at that, we at FSLogix have been very, very focused on transforming that. And today's title is really all about Office 365. We're going to talk about a little other stuff because it'd be a shame not to get your attention on that. But as we look at Office 365 and what we're doing, it's a huge, huge problem, right? And a little bit about us, right? 800 customers, right? Gabe updates this slide, I think, weekly, man. It's unbelievable.
I'll tell you, so I started in February. That slide was 400.
Yeah, and I just changed it today for this webinar because I know you like changed it 3 or 4 months ago. I don't remember exactly how long ago it was, but I actually updated it because I hate referring to the fact that my slides are out of date. So yeah, we have grown unbelievable. I think when I started 3 years ago, Mr. Goodman recruited me on the notion that they had 10 solid customers. Mr. Goodman may or may not have lied to me. I don't know for sure. But I know I have been busy over the last 3 years bringing customers on. Our European team has. And then now my focus is on federal, and we're bringing federal customers on like there's no tomorrow. So important part for everybody on this call to remember, we work very well in the industry, right? We want to make sure whether you're on Citrix hosted on VMware, Citrix on Zen desktop or Zen server, it doesn't matter to us. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for you, right? And helping you deliver that great user experience. I think it's important, Gabe, we need to point out, and Gabe and I have been in the industry for a long time, one of the great things about this company is everybody but our sales guy, or our lead sales guy, has a little bit of gray hair. Some of us missing hair, right? And the important part of that is they've been in the industry for a long time, seeing things go on. And now, as we all know, Gabe, you remember the first SQL Server you deployed?
No, it was that long ago, Dave. I've forgotten a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I know. So have I. But the important part out of that is we have learned a lot of stuff, right? If I go back and look at my first SQL Server I deployed, I would never do it the same way, right? Heck, I wouldn't deploy my next VDI pool, whatever way I'm doing it, the same way I did 2 years ago, right? So as we start to look at the change in technology, it's very important as architects and engineers out there that we make sure we're paying attention to this because we need to use these new tools. And the great news is this team has been doing this stuff for a while, so they've got a lot of experience, and we're changing everything we do. And as we talk about desktop transformation, from Dave's perspective, it's all about how do I get from physical to virtual or physical to the cloud, right? There's a lot of things that go on there. And Gabe has seen, and he's done a lot of work in the research on this, of what are some of the things that impact us as we start to make that transformation. And ultimately, it comes down to good technology, being able to change what we're doing. And I'm going to let Gabe talk a little bit about some of our awards because he knows that part of the industry and he knows how important it is of what we've accomplished. So Gabe, tell them all about what we've done.
I used to judge these awards. So my background, in case you don't know, is I worked for BrianMadden.com for the last 11 years, and I joined FSLogix in February because as the industry, when I first got started in the industry, there was maybe 10 companies, right? There was Citrix and Microsoft and SoftGrid at the time before Microsoft had even bought them, and KevSoft, which is Kevin Goodman's initial company that made T-Scale. And so there was a handful of companies, but as the world grew, we hadn't even called it desktop virtualization yet. As the world grew, now it became like 200 different companies out there that all do something for end user computing. And so these awards that TechTarget puts on for both Citrix Synergy and VMworld, these awards were meant to kind of find the best products in each kind of area. And the Citrix one is great because it's largely end user computing focused. And so these 200 different companies out there that all have the ability to sponsor Citrix. They can submit their products for consideration by an independent panel of judges. And so we submitted our Cloud Cache product this year at the Synergy 2018. And Cloud Cache, which we'll talk about a little bit later, won both the New Technology Award and then all the winners of the different awards get put into a pool, and one of those is chosen to win Best of Show. And they found it so revolutionary that they chose FSLogix Cloud Cache for Best of Show as well.
And I like to think to myself, Gabe, that we really had to have our act together to do that, because if I was a tech target person, I would do everything I could to make sure I didn't show any favoritism, right? That, oh, Mr. Gabe Knuth is over there now. I want to be above reproach, right? So I imagine it was a really a hard thing to go, wow.
For that reason, I did not expect to win. I wanted to submit just because we need to be in consideration with all the other products out there. And yeah, for that reason, I did not expect to win. And that really, it just goes to show how ragingly independent this process is. And like I said, I participated in it for many years, and it is as independent as can be. Of course, now it's the marketing guy for FSLogix saying that, but I would have told you that 6 months ago or 8 months ago too, as the BrianMadden.com guy. And now's a good enough time to point out too that when I left after 11 years, I chose to come to FSLogix because of the people that you had on the slide a few slides ago, because I had existing relationships with a lot of people, because having covered FSLogix for a long time. And I mean, I've seen this product grow. I was among the group that awarded FSLogix the 2015 application and desktop virtualization category award. So, I've seen FSLogix grow, and I liked what was going on so much, I joined the company.
And it's great having you on board. The greatest thing about having Gabe on board is he makes my PowerPoints look awesome, and he puts good content in there. And let's get to some of that content, because it's important to know. So what are our products, right? We got 4 main products: our app masking, Java control, our profile container. We're going to wrap up on Office 365 and really dig deep into that. But let's go over a little bit of what they do, just so that you can kind of see what's going on. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Cloud Cache and what that means to all the people on the phone. So they come in different ways, right? You can buy them as modules. You can buy them as suites. We often get customers that are like, oh, the only thing I care about is solving my Office 365 problem. And we get that, right? And they solve that problem literally in hours, right, with us. And then they come back and they're like, you did such a great job there. Let me look at your other stuff, right? I have had customers, very large customers, go from just looking at Office 365 to buying the whole entire suite literally in an hour, right? When they start to hear all the different things that go on, they're like, wow, maybe I need to get the whole thing, and they go that way. I've had other customers, very large customers, take that path over a year, right? It doesn't really matter to us how you do that. We're there to help you as we move along in those pieces. So let's
talk Dave, real quick.
Yeah.
We were going to do the poll questions, I think, at the beginning, and then we forgot because we were so excited to get moving here.
You're right. So let's pull up the question around Office 365. Actually, Stephanie, if you want to throw them all up there, I will kind of talk about what the Office 365 problem is and let people hear that so that they can know what we're going to talk about later. So go ahead, start the polling questions, and we'll wait for you guys to get those done. This is just give us a little feedback so we can make sure we're hitting the mark for you. So, Gabe, you know as well as I do, one of the biggest problems in the Office 365 deployment process is it works great, absolutely great on a physical PC. However, once we start going into virtual, things start to fall apart, and you really can't blame Microsoft for it falling apart. It's really been something that we've introduced as part of the industry, right? Guys like me. Yep.
If we would have done what Microsoft wanted us to do in 2003, when Office 2003 came out and cache exchange mode was introduced, then we'd be fine right now. But we couldn't do it in VDI, and now that we have to have it, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, exactly, because we engineered around it, right? And one of the things I used to do when I was a former VDI guy, I would build what I call pods based off 150 users. And those pods, I would use a file share to put data on, right? Folder redirection. And you had to design around that very carefully, because if you didn't, you ended up in problems, right? I was just up at a customer, and I'm going to leave the name out to protect the innocent, but they had like thousands of users on a really fancy storage array trying to do folder redirection for their OST. and they're dying, right? They're literally, the machine, this fancy storage array can't keep up. Customers are complaining, right? And so they reached out to us because it doesn't matter how you search it, poor Outlook performance, redirected OSTs, you come down the path of FSLogix, right? And so as I started working with them, you know, we're 3 weeks in their project and they're going to be rolling out to many, many users. And ultimately, it's undoing some of those legacy things that we did to try and make things work. Gabe, I think you know some guys that I know that did a roadshow. Was it, there's 100 things wrong with my environment and they're all related to folder redirection? Is that how the title went?
It was, I've got
Some-
99 problems and folder redirection is every one of them.
There we go. Yeah. So some friends of Gabe's and I did that presentation, and it's true, right? Some of us have used folder redirection to the nth degree. Now, how many people, and you don't have to actually admit it, have done something like redirect app data local, right? I'm not going to make fun of you for doing that because you're trying to solve a business problem, right? However, it's not a good thing to do. It causes a lot of other performance problems. And as we start to think about that, we need, as architects and engineers, to figure out ways to undo that. And we will talk deeply about that here in just a second. I think we got one more poll left to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll
Think
move
this is our
on.
last one, and
Stephanie,
then we'll.
awesome. Once Stephanie gives us the clear, we'll move on to that. So, you know, the whole FSLogix story is about trying to undo some of those legacy things, right? And as we start to look at that in our environments, it's important that we take an appropriate action moving forward so that we can make sure that our end users have a reasonably nice experience. I used to say, if it isn't better than what they had before, they're probably not going to like it, right? Think about your daily commute. If you're driving to work in the Lexus, might be pretty nice. If I replace that Lexus with a Yugo, you might not enjoy that commute as much, right? Yeah, it's a car, right? And it functions. It's got four wheels and a door, right? But you may not enjoy it as much as being in the Lexus. And that's what we got to remember as we design things for the end user, because the end user wants to work, right?
The Yugo is
Ultimately,
the turning off show window contents while dragging of automobiles. Is that?
yeah, or the put my mail in online mode, right? When I go Office 365. So these are all things that we need to consider. So let's talk a little bit about app masking. I'm going to spend 3 minutes on it because I think it's important for everybody to know. App masking for me was what got me excited about FSLogix many years ago, right? And the important part is what it does is it changes the complexity of our environments so that I don't have to have an image or silos as in-app servers serving up my apps for sales, right? And my apps for marketing and accounting and legal. And for the feds listening on there, you know, it could be for operations, communications, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we all have our groups that we have to support. And when we think about that, that creates a lot of time. Now, if you want to be cool and say, I've got 100 images in my environment, I manage them all, great, good for you, right? I don't think that's the cool button that you really want to push. So the FSLogix approach is let's change how we're doing that. And instead of having multiple images, let's throw all the applications into the image. Now, if you're 10,000 users or 100,000 users, one image may not be where you're going to get because of politics and things like that. But ultimately, you could get down to where you had literally thousands of applications installed into your base image, and you are able to now give those applications out to the user on login, right? So how this works is our filter driver says, hey, whatever group you're a member of determines what applications you get to see. And this gives us the capability to have, like on this one, Adobe and the Office Suite installed, right? And then for the next user, it's Adobe Pro and Visio, right? It changes on user login and gives us the ability to assign those applications literally to the user so that they're pulling them from a regular install that appears to be on disk. We don't have to wait for anything to deploy, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, this was game changing because I spent a lot of time in the AppVert world, right? SoftGrid Certified Architect number 3, right? That's a cool badge that I get to wear. Really not so cool because it made me lose all my hair. But as we start to look at that this is a different way of solving that problem of applications to the user without having to interact with each other. And
And no
I think this,
sequencing, no packaging, no nothing like that to
yeah,
do
and
this
Gabe,
stuff.
I don't think these guys are going to believe us until we actually show them in the demo, and we'll do that here in the end. I can take and remove Office 2016 from this machine I'm on in literally 35 seconds, right? That's not figuratively, that is literal.
I'm the
So when we
marketing
look at
guy, and
that,
I can do it in 35 seconds.
yeah, I mean, there's no special talent needed, right? I mean, it just it does its thing. So it really changes what we're doing, and it gives me the capability to run Office 2010, 2013, 2016, all from the same image, handle my migration of my users via Active Directory, not via pushing images and apps and all that good stuff. So we've done a lot of talking about that. Let's move on to Java. Gabe, you got anything great to say about Java?
Here's the thing. If you care about Java, you care about this. And if you don't care about Java, check your phone email for a couple of seconds because we're going to talk about it. The main thing that I like to talk about with regards to Java control is that there's other products out there that let you assign certain versions of Java to individual websites. We're like that, except we work in addition to websites, we can do that to applications. And that means that you can have multiple versions of Java co-located on the same box, and you can hide or show only the version of Java that a specific application requires. So if I have one app that requires one version of Java and another app that requires a second version of Java, ordinarily we can't do that, or that doesn't work. With FSLogix, the same technology we use for app masking, we can tie one application to one version of Java. And so instead of having to have multiple images to support just these Java applications, we can still facilitate one base image with all of our options baked into it.
And for the Govies listening, here's the coolest part. IA is not going to know, right? I can literally make this not exist on the operating system. So when your IA scans come through, it doesn't get flagged, right? Now, I'm not telling any of you Govies to go out there and hide from IA and do things that you shouldn't be doing. But I am telling you, if you must allow it and you can't deny it, right, this is the better way of doing it, right? It's putting a security framework allowing what you must allow, right? And making sure that it doesn't cause you IA problems out the yin-yang, right? So giving you that ability to make sure that you're allowing what you must allow, right? And no further, and not showing up on the IA reports every day is a cool thing, right? And when those apps fire off, it's pretty cool what it does, and it just works, right? So a really important part of the whole process is it just works, and it's going to keep you out of the hot box with IA. So let's talk a little bit about profile containers, right? Profile containers was our original product that we released. Somebody in engineering had an aha moment as we were working with one of our customers that, you know what, maybe somebody doesn't want the whole profile container and they want other parts for just Office. And we'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately, what we do with a profile container is we take and intercept C users, percent username, and we put it into a VHD out on SMB storage, right? And by putting it in that container, what happens is a lot of things change. Instead of logging in and a whole bunch of files being pulled to your desktop, I log in, my container is connected, the data appears as if it's local, and I read what I only actually need, right? So we all know the worst thing an end user could do is save a DVD to their desktop, right? Because then when they log in with their roaming profile, what happens is that gets transferred from the storage array or the SMB server that's probably sitting on a storage array to the local instance, which is actually getting committed to the storage array, right? So we're moving a whole bunch of stuff around. One of our customers that was doing roaming profile-esque type stuff replaced their technology with us, and they were able to go for 3,400 users from 31,000 IOPS down to 2,500. And if you don't think that's earth-shattering, let me say just once more, 3,400 users, 31,000 IOPS, down to 2,500 IOPS. And ultimately, the reason that they were able to do that is instead of dragging files all around the world, right, to build the user's desktop just in time for them to log in, now all we're doing is connecting them to that disk. The simplest way I can break that down to, if anybody's having hard time struggling with that, is imagine it's all in your USB drive. Now, in the government, we don't allow USB drives in PC. Heck, I don't think the commercial world lets it happen that much either. But imagine if your user had all that data local. We're not transferring it all around. So once again, taking away some of that stuff that we did as engineers because we didn't have the technology to do it differently, and replacing it with a different solution so that we can do things better. DJ.
This is, remember, so you mentioned the 99 problems and folder redirection is every one of them thing before. This looks an awful lot like folder redirection because it is an awful lot like folder redirection, except we take away all of that extra, all the stuff that makes folder redirection bad, we get rid of that.
File copies?
So no, the profile, well, file copy, yeah, like the all the SMB chatter of, because we're not this, you mentioned the file copies, it's not a roaming profile, right? So since that stuff lives in that remote container, we're not copying stuff back and forth. So the login times are super fast because things aren't being copied down at logon. But then also we're eliminating the way that we can, the way that this works really fast is that we can, in folder redirection, if you look at that, every time a file is accessed, there's all this extra SMB data, and you're killing your file server the more stuff you put into a redirected folder, because you're killing the network and you're killing the storage as we're trying to find these files. But because we've used this patented containerization technology, and it's just a VHD, but we do some extra stuff to make it even more awesome. Because we're doing that, we've eliminated all that extra network chatter, and so our performance is almost as good as native, and sometimes better than native if you're comparing it to slower storage that was, slower local storage. So this really is the best of both worlds when it comes to like roaming profiles and folder redirection. Both of those not great if you try to use the stuff out of the box, but with us, it really is awesome.
I want to, DJ's a consultant, right, DJ? And you spend a lot of time working with customers. And there's a lot of hard problems that we solve in consulting, right? But I'm wondering, how much time do you spend trying to make sure that the user has a good, fast login experience?
Yeah, I'd say that is one of the primary complaints that I get when I walk into a place that's having trouble. It's usually number one or close to it is login times or the general experience therein.
Yep, and it's funny. Let's make this very personal, okay? All of us, at one point in our life, will have health issues that we might want to have addressed in a timely manner, right? Do you want your doctor waiting a minute, 5 seconds to log in, or do you want them waiting 5 seconds to log in? And when you think about it from that perspective, from an IT perspective, what can I do to make my users log in like I would want for the doctor that's going to be logging in a life or death situation, right? And for us at FSLogix, one of the areas that we have a ton of success is in healthcare, right? Reducing those logins down to reasonable, predictable timeframes, right? It won't be perfect the first time and not the 99th time. It'll be perfect the first time and the 99th time. So as we start to think about that, being able to have that predictable, I go out and build this and I get my login times to say 15 seconds, right? And I'm happy with that. I want them to stay at 15 seconds forever. I don't want them to go from 15 to 16 to 18 to 55, right? And with FSLogix, you can get that consistent, predictable login. So this is just one of those things that just makes life better for the end user and for IT, right? Because we're going to be able to optimize some stuff.
We allowed Cherry Health in Michigan to, and we've got case studies on this, we allowed Cherry Health in Michigan to see 70,000 more patients a year because we freed up so much time.
And when you bring that up, Gabe, when I first read, I get to proof a lot of these case studies. And when I first read that, I was like, really? We're reaching, right? And then I reached out to my marketing guys and talked to them about it. They're like, no. That's what they're telling us. That's not us doing the calculation. That's what they're telling us. And when you think about it, that's huge, right? And Cherry Health is is the term an underprivileged healthcare provider? Is that what the term is, Gabe?
No insurance or limited insurance. They have a term for that. But yeah, it's people that don't have access to insurance or healthcare via a traditional insurance means. So these are seeing people that have low income, no income, or no access to insurance, and so you can imagine they are highly taxed in terms of resources, and at several locations all around Michigan. And the fact that 70,000 more people in that situation have can see a doctor in a year, that's really cool.
Yeah, and
And
it's something to
you're
be
right,
proud
that was
of.
one of the
For
first things I
them
read
doing
when
it
I
and us
joined.
helping them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, really exciting stuff on that. Let's move on to a little bit of the Office 365 discussion, right? And this is what most of the people join this for, and we're going to dig into this. But what you're going to see is it's very similar to things that we've talked about before. So once again, the problem with Office 365 is data, right? I don't want all the data to be a live online access. I want, from a user perspective, for it to be like it was local. So when I read through my emails, I don't have to wait for them to load, et cetera, et cetera. And with the FSLogix solution, we're doing very much like we did with profiles. We're intercepting and putting into a folder a series of folders, right? And so what we're doing is we're saying, let's take the OST. So if you're not familiar with where the OST, it's C users, % username, app data, local, Microsoft Outlook. And we intercept that folder, put it into the VHD, and boom, off we go. OST gets built. It doesn't matter if it's 1 meg or 500 gig. It doesn't matter to us. The performance is as if it was local, right? And it's very important to remember we have a lot of Me Tooers in the world, right? People that say, "Oh yeah, we do OSTs also," and they do. They absolutely do. The important part to remember is it's never just the OST. You're going to go to it's mail first in the OST, and then it's OneDrive, right? And then it's going to be my Skype for Business doesn't work like I want it to, or my this or that. All the stuff that's part of the Office suite are the things that become very important in the scenario. And I think, Gabe, you've got some statistics of how many people are looking at, on this call, are looking at Office 365 right now. Would that number turn out to be?
I actually don't recall what that number turned out to be. I
Yeah,
wrote good.
so
20% said they weren't going to use Office 365. That's right.
Yeah.
So that so that means 80% of the people are using Office 365, and the 20% that aren't, I'm guessing, but they're probably going to have to at some point. They're just not currently using it right now.
Just not far enough out on the radar, right? Or close enough on the radar. So yeah, and eventually it's all going away, right? I mean, Office 365 will be the solution going forward eventually, right? I don't know what the date is or what the grand master plan is for Microsoft on that, but all that other stuff is going to be deprecated eventually, and you're going to have to think about that. What was the number on OneDrive? I'm really curious from that perspective.
57% said yes.
Wow. That is actually, and I didn't look at these numbers because I wanted to get a live reaction out of that, and it's higher than I thought, but not out of whack, right? So that tells me that there's a lot of people that are going down the Office 365 path, and they've gotten the OST problem bubbling up, and OneDrive is right there with it, right? Which makes sense because the whole scheme of things, right, is attach data and links to mail, not the actual data, right? Keep it in OneDrive. Mm-hmm. So it makes total sense. DJ,
and that's the number that we see in corporate environments. But for government, I expected this audience maybe to be a little bit lower. And so to see that it's at the same, that's fantastic.
I'm curious from your perspective, DJ, when you're out talking to customers and the OneDrive piece comes up, what's your thoughts and what's your talk with customers as you're starting to go down that path?
So typically what I'm seeing with OneDrive, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is that it's basically considered a attached off to the side thing. In other words, they might have it on their laptop, but they don't have it in their VDI. They might have it on certain devices, but not in their server environment because of all the storage implications and all that kind of stuff. And so it's maybe used, but it's not used well.
That's funny. So it could be 100% of the people use it on 57% of their devices.
Yeah. That's a good point. And you know what that behavior drives, or what that drives as far as behavior is, okay, I have to email myself files, right? And that's not what we want the end user doing. So it really, we want to make sure, and I'm going to show in the demo here in just a minute, that from an IT perspective, we're doing things so that we can get good behavior out of the user. Let's talk a little bit, and I'm going to let Gabe talk a lot about this because he did all the core market pieces of this, and this is a real life product. I did a lot of the technology side of it and been deploying it with customers, but I'm going to let Gabe go through a lot of this. So Gabe, let's start going. You just tell me when you want me to advance slides.
Oh, that's fine. So just today we released our code with FSLogix Cloud Cache that supports Microsoft Azure, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I just want to start by saying Cloud Cache is a feature that is available today of our Profile Container and Office 365 container products. And the reason we created Cloud Cache was because with any redirection technology, including ours, but it also could be UPD, UPM, folder redirection. If we lose the connection to our storage, you can hit the next button if you want, Dave. I don't know if you can make me a presenter or give me control. That might be difficult.
You have control.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So anytime we lose that network connection or the storage, that means that our profile or our access to that data is disappeared as well. And so in the case of FSLogix and Profile Container, when we lose that connection, we lose our profile. And so we wanted to come up with a way to make this whole situation more robust. We have some built-in capabilities into Profile Container and Office 365 Container that will automatically try to reconnect the VHD file and so on, but certain applications like OneDrive don't recover well in those situations, and then the user still has to log off and log back on again. And so that's what we set out to fix. And so what we ended up doing, there we go, was we created a local caching component, and that's the cache part of Cloud Cache. And so this local cache is also a VHD file, and every time we access a block, not a file, but an actual block of this VHD from that remote storage, it gets stored in this local cache as well. And so it's looking at the hot data, if you want to picture it that way. But if we lose that connection to our remote storage, the applications are still talking to the cache. And so if the data that they're looking for is already there, they keep running. And in the case of OneDrive,
so you mean if I'm working on my presentation, and we all know, I hope I offend a storage person right now, storage guys do something offensive, right? Like fail over a controller because of whatever reason. I'm going to be able to still keep working on my PowerPoint?
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? We invest all this money into this high availability storage solution where we can fail over to a different array from the controller or something, and it still causes a blip that causes an application to misbehave. We can avoid that now, and that's brand new, net new for the industry.
And if I'm creating some content, that's all going to get saved in the local cache until it comes back online, right?
Correct.
And that's like awesome for an end user compute architect because that reduces my downtime and means how many less calls. Let's just say a storage controller failed over and I had 5,000 users on it. I might get 1,000 calls to the help desk saying something went wrong, right? That's 1,000 less calls to the help desk just by implementing some pretty darn simple technology.
And your network or your file server guy is going to be thankful too, because if the data is already pulled down to the local cache, I don't have to hit the remote storage again. So when that storage comes back online, hang on, I hit the wrong button. When that storage comes back online, we resynchronize it and then make everything connect again. But if that storage, even in this situation where everything's functioning perfectly, if we've already pulled down the object that you need and stored it in the local cache, we don't have to go back to remote storage the next time you go to access that. So this is going to result in reduced load on your network and file server as well.
Which means I can deploy more users on my infrastructure without having to deploy more IOPS necessarily to my storage.
Correct.
Which is, from an architect perspective, that's awesome, right? It means my costs are going to go down. It means my performance to my end user is going to go up. I hate the phrase, but that's what do they call that? A win-win, right? That makes everybody happy, right?
So, right. So there, but it's cooler than that. So while we were doing this, we also realized that now that we have this local cache that's kind of in control of the situation, we can just have that thing also talk to additional storage locations. And so right now, what are the prevailing ways of making sure your profile data is replicated? It's super expensive storage, with controllers in between. It's DFS, so you get the shared namespace because that's all everybody seems to use it for, just so you have that one UNC path location to address, multiple file servers. All of this is very complicated, not all that effective, and is rife with its own problems. With Cloud Cache, each endpoint, each desktop, I should say, is sort of in charge of making sure that its profiles are synchronized all around. And so that local cache is actually in communication with multiple different storage locations at the same time, making sure that they are up to date. And so we support 4. There's really not a theoretical limit to the number that we can support, but there's a practical one. You're going to run out of resources somewhere along the line at some point. So, but we've done testing up through 4, and we'll support up through 4 because we know that it still works great in those situations. And so the way this kind of works is there's a registry setting that you use I think it's a semicolon separated list of storage locations. The first location in the list is storage location 1. We read from that location. And then all the other locations we simply write to. So we're writing to all the locations, we're reading from the top one in the list. And if that storage location disappears, we don't care. We just start reading from the next one down the list. And if that location comes back online, we resynchronize it, make sure everything's okay, and then we continue using it again. And so we've got storage redundancy, storage availability now across multiple locations. You can put these VHD files in other data centers, hot sites. You can have true globally redundant disaster recovery for your user profiles. And the next best part.
Oh, hold on. Before you get to that next best part, one of the things that is a struggle as we start to look at this transition is, we're all in the process of going from some level of physical into some level of ADI, right? And as we look at that, the really cool part from my perspective of trying to make that transition happen, you can run this on the physical, get everything up to sync, and when you're ready, all you're doing is having the user log in with those particular connection settings to that data that they've been replicating for however long, and boom, it's right there, right? And weirdly enough, they could go back and forth, but don't tell them that, right? So from a design and transformation perspective, this is an awesome thing. Now, the cool part that he's going to show you, and I'll let him continue on with that because this is really cool. So hit it, Gabe.
I mean, it supports cloud storage too. And that's the thing. Today, the release that was just posted at 7 o'clock Mountain Time this morning, is that we now support Azure Page Blobs and Azure Premium Page Blobs. And so you can now natively communicate with Azure Page Blob object-based cloud storage and put your Windows user profiles there. And so if you do that, you can have your profile stored in a local SMB share also at the same time as you have it stored in Azure. And so this facilitates moving users from on-prem to the cloud. This facilitates having your data replicated, your profile data replicated around the cloud, because now in Azure you can take advantage of their redundancy zones. And really, the best thing about this, you can put your user profile data anywhere. Make sure it's all in sync. And that means that no matter where your desktops happen to be, on-prem, in the cloud, physical, VDI, you can access that profile data from the nearest best performing location while also having backups and redundancy.
I can literally build DR into my storage arrays for end user profiles and data in seconds, right? I mean, it's just a registry key and configure the storage array that you want to go to, and you're done.
And that's just it. It doesn't have to be the super expensive storage in the cloud. You don't have to have storage gateway set up that consume compute resources and so on. You don't have to have expensive storage systems on-prem or complicated DFS or things like that. It is literally install FSLogix, configure one registry key, and make sure there's actually storage locations to host the files. But this can all be done over lunch if you wanted to try it out. And This was when I joined FSLogix. This is the thing we won the award for at Citrix Synergy. And when I joined FSLogix, I couldn't wait to make this slide right here. Dave, it's 12:47 my time. So
yep.
so
let's
we
keep
should get to
cruising along
demoing.
real quick. So we don't need to talk about how it reduces. We'll just show this up there so you guys can do it. But it's really good stuff. Changes the math problem, right? Not only can you put it in play, but you can save some money. So let's stop, and I want to do a live demo for just a second because I want to make sure that people can see this working. So here is my demo user mail account, right? I logged into this machine. It's a non-persistent machine with us running. Notice I have 8,000 messages. I am going to take away and go through a couple messages, right? So you see how quick it's going. It just behaves like it's local. Let's take a look at what's going on underneath. So let me just close this so I can show you guys, because it's important that everybody understands how we're changing the world. So I have a little script on here somewhere. It is my ODFC demo. There it is, ODFC demo bat. So let's just kind of fire some stuff up for me so that we can kind of go through what the technology is and what it's doing. So let's talk about configuration first, since the reg editor is the first thing to come up in my little demo script. So configuration is a series of reg keys. Okay, so here you can see I've got my locations. Here I have it crossed out right now because I was doing some testing, but here's my CCD locations, my cloud cache locations, right? I've got it set to delete my local profile if for any reason there's a local profile, and we have it turned on, right? I don't know how much easier we can make it. Literally 2 keys are all you really need, enabled and a location, right? You can deploy these out with GPOs, GPPs, reg hacks. It's up to you, however you want to do it.
MDM management profiles. You don't even need
exactly. Yeah. So it's very, very simple. Literally, this portion usually takes me less than 4 minutes to set up with the customer. We're installing a filter driver and setting up some stuff, and then we're off and rolling. Now, let's take a look at what's actually going on. So here is my location for my demo user. Notice I have a VHD for ODFC. I have a VHD for profiles. Why do I have 2? Well, I want to separate cache data from non-cache data, right? So that if I need to entitle the help desk to go through and do things like clean up a bad mailbox or something, they can handle it at that level. Maybe the simplest thing for them to do is delete the VHD, right? I want to
point out, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, Dave, but as the marketing guy, I hate the name ODFC. That's Office 365 container.
Yeah, I named it ODFC because I'm an engineer, and it stands for Data Folder Container, and that's why we went down that path, because it wasn't just OSTs, right? It's all the stuff, right? Let's look in to what it looks like from a user. So here's my Outlook folder, App Data Local, Microsoft Outlook, right? Boom, I'm now inside the VHD. So I've got this little text document. I'm gonna take you over here to show you this all going on. So I am going to assign a drive letter, if I haven't already done that, I haven't, to my ODFC folder, or my Office 365 folder, as it says.
I just wanted to make it clear. You can keep calling it that now.
So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to browse to that so I can show you guys. Look, it's just a VHD, right? It's not anything special. The special part's what I'm going to show you next. So let's go into the ODFC folder. See, there's that same text document, right? If I add something to it, you'll notice that on the right, it's going to change, right? So there we go. I'm going to hit save, and you're going to see that the timestamp on the right is changing, right? It's the same data, but it's inserted very, very low into the operating system as part of the file system. So let's take a look at how do I know all this is going on, right? So here it is. Let's talk specifically about ODFC, or Office 365. So here is my App Data Local Microsoft Outlook folder. It's going to Volume 4, ODFC. Let's look at I got to find it on here, my OneDrive. There it is. There's OneDrive, right? My OneDrive folder is going to Volume 4, OneDrive. Let's actually go look at OneDrive. Here's OneDrive on the system. Native interface. None of this crazy stuff, right? None of this stuff, you do it one way when you're at home and on your PC, and you do it another way when you're elsewhere, right? It looks just like it is. So let's go into this documents folder. I got a whole bunch of stuff in here. I'm going to make a document. I'm going to show you that this just works like it's expected to, right? So I'm going to do a spreadsheet. We'll call this CUGC Gov, right? With some random, because if I ever do this again, it causes me problems, letters. Boom. In a second here, it's going to have replicated because it's a very small file. Boom, it's replicated. It's done, right? It just works like we natively expect it to. It doesn't need a whole lot of configuration. It doesn't need a whole lot of changes to what you're doing, and your user is already trained on how to do that. From a deployment and looking at it perspective, which here we go. I want to go right back here. So here's the drives. If this was a XenApp server, I might have 30 or 40 of these in there, right? All assigned to the user and intercepted at the user level, right? Now, in this demo, the next step I have is a bad VHD, right? Notice how that bad VHD shows up as a junction. And I might be a little over-exaggerating a bad VHD, but it's important to understand that when you start looking at OneDrive and Office in protected mode, et cetera, that having that junction causes some physical limitations, like add, change, delete notifications don't traverse junctions, right? So what does FSLogix do? Look at this. Here is my Outlook folder that's being intercepted. I showed it to you earlier, right? It just shows up as a directory. I use the phrase to the app, the OS, the user, and even the admin, you don't know what's happening, right? So it doesn't cause problems to your end user that they're trying to configure OneDrive and OneDrive says, nope, that's a junction, can't do it. It just works in that environment. So low integrity mode, Office protected mode, OneDrive, et cetera, all that stuff just works across our modified junction that we put in play. I want to show really quick because I think I put a whole lot of emphasis on it. Let's take a look at app masking. And while I'm getting transition, DJ, any questions in regards to Office 365 at the moment?
None for Office 365.
Awesome. Any for
there is one in here
profiles?
for how do we compare app masking with existing products like Unidesk and AppV. So try to think of that as you're going through and demoing app masking. See if we can kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, so here we go. I'm going to fire up my app masking thing. It's going to open some stuff up for me just because it makes it easier for me to drive. So here we go. I've got Office 2016 installed. Here's the installation folder, right, on the file system, right? All that good stuff. I'm going to create this little rule. Here's how quick it is, right? I'm going to call this CUG Fed, CUGC Fed with some random letters. There we go. That's enough random ones. I'm going to hit enter. Now, don't run. Don't go get your cup of coffee because you don't have time for that. So here we go. We are going to create the rule. I'm going to tell it I want to remove Office. It usually takes me longer to find Office. See what I mean? It takes me longer to find it. There it is, Office 2016. I'm going to hit scan. Here we are. I'm finished now. Almost finished. I might have been leading a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to put this rule into effect and watch what happens to this folder. Okay, so let me put this rule into effect. We just pop it into a little test mode. Yes. And notice that folder's gone. It doesn't exist to the file system anymore. Watch what happens when I do add remove programs and refresh it. Come down to the Office section. It's gone, right? Doesn't
Look at all your
exist
shortcuts
anymore.
too.
All my shortcuts changed, right? Now, if I logged off, logged back in, it would change to not associated with anything. I just see data. Now, how do I apply this rule? I'm going to take it off real quick so you can see the data come back. If I got to click on the off button. There we go. There's the data coming back. Come back to add remove programs. Do a refresh. Office is right back there, right? It's just that quick. So here's the practical application of this rule. I would say deny everybody. Make this rule hide Office from everybody. And then I'd create a user group process, whatever. I'm going to use a group, and I'd call it Office 2016. And I'd hit OK. And I'd say, hey, if they're in the Office 2016 group, don't hide the application from them. So now my audit point for Office installations is Active Directory. Right? I go look at Active Directory. I got 10,000 objects. I better have 10,000 licenses. I do Adobe, and I have 1,000 objects. I better have 1,000 licenses. So it gives us a very quick and easy mechanism to entitle those applications to a user. And if I was using this in production, and Gabe called me up and said, hey, take me out of 2013 and put me in 2016, it's literally moving his user account from one Active Directory group to another. And that's
And
how
that hopefully
easy
answers
it
the
makes it
question that Amit had asked about how do we compare app masking with Unidesk and AppV. It's that's all app masking is right there. And we can dig down and do things at the file level, font level, printers, file type association, things like that. But we have a lot more granular control that we can show you as well in a different setting. But that's how that's it. So there's no sequencing, no packaging, there's no layering. We don't have to build up our different OS layer and then our application layer and our user layers and things like that. That's app masking right there. You install it. I promise you can do this over lunch someday. And
the hardest part about
the
doing it is getting your head around doing it a different way. That's what took me about a week to figure out. Is I've been doing these things the old-fashioned way for so many years. All of a sudden, now there's a different way of doing them, and it's most of my customers in less than 2 weeks, they are fully productionalized. They get it, right? It's very, very simple to deploy. DJ, any questions out there? I know we've been talking a lot, been trying to answer some of the questions as we go, but let's close out with questions and how do you contact the FSLogix team? So I'm going to put up the contact info while you're pulling out the questions.
Well, one other question about Java, surprise, is how about using one app with multiple components within that use different versions of Java, and I think you meant within that app.
That is absolutely doable. So when you do the rule, you literally get down to the executable layer of the app, right? So I could go in and say, let's say it's, there's an executable for Tiddlywinks and Doomaflockets, right? I would assign the appropriate version of Java to each of those executables. It's that simple.
Yep. Awesome.
I wish I could make it harder, but it's not.
Okay, we're going to do one more question and then we're going to kind of wrap up here. So will app masking work when multiple versions cannot be installed in the same OS, such as Bluebeam was mentioned, you cannot install more than one version to the same OS?
Yeah, so yes, there's some tricks that you have to know, okay? But let's use Office for an example. I can't install multiple versions of Office technically to the same OS, right? And with us, there's some rules that you have to do to make it all work. But ultimately, when you're doing your mask, you want that machine to look bare and naked, right? So as you're doing that, what will happen is it won't know there's another version of Office on there. And then you'll go through and we do some what we call alt pathing that makes it so that it will just work like it is expected. So the answer is yes, it can be done.
And I think it's important. I just want to hammer this home that this works on physical desktops too. This isn't just a virtual desktop solution. So you can use the same approach, the same AD groups, the same installation, the same everything for all of your desktops, not just VDI desktops. It works for RDSH, it works for physical, DAS, you name it. We work across the board.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour here, I'll remind everybody too. I'm sure Stephanie will be wanting to do this, but you can see in the chat window there, and we'll be sending out a survey as well. But these surveys are really important for us, so we can know exactly how these are effective and things we can do better, ways we can improve, but also the things that matter to you. So make sure you fill out those surveys.
And for those on the phone that are feds, if you want to get directly in contact with us, I forgot to put this in there, but if you email the federal team at fslogix.notxxo.com, you can get in touch with myself, Matt Quigg, or Kevin Brown. We all monitor that alias. So that is your easiest way to get directly to the federal team.
All right, thanks guys. Let me grab the screen back. I just have one quick slide. That is a little wrap-up slide. Yep, just want to thank you guys again. That was a great presentation. I love the interactivity of that today. So appreciate that format change up. That was nice. And just a reminder for all of you guys out there, as DJ said, there are 2 links in the chat window for you. There's a link to the survey. It's short, anonymous. It takes like less than 5 minutes. And we always look at that data to see how we can do better. And I also put a link out there to a forum thread out in our discussion forum. So if you do have questions later that you didn't get to today, or you rewatch the recording and you have another question, feel free to type it in the forums. We'll make sure these guys see the questions and get you some answers. So that's there for you. We'll also put both of those links in the follow-up email that you'll get tomorrow. And finally, I know some of you may have opted in to win an Amazon gift card. We will announce the winner of the gift card on Twitter and at mycugc.org in that same forum thread. So keep an eye there and on Twitter, and make sure you follow us at mycugc. And I think I can let you all get back to your day. Thanks again to Kevin and Gabe and Dave for being here with us today. And thanks to DJ for keeping track of all the questions and keeping us going.
My pleasure.
All right, guys, I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you on the next CUGC Connect webinar or user share. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Peace.